In the silent suburbs of Chicago, a young man named Ethan walked with heavy dreams. His shoes were old, but his eyes carried the light of 1,000 tomorrows. He worked nights at a small diner, cleaning tables when the world slept. Every coin he saved wasn't for comfort, but for the empire he saw in his mind. People laughed when he spoke about owning skyscrapers one day, but Ethan smiled quietly. He knew every king begins in the dust. His apartment was smaller than his ambition, but filled with vision boards. He'd wake up before dawn, watch city lights fade, and whisper, "Someday, I'll own this." The city didn't notice him yet, but destiny had already taken his name. His mother's old photo on the desk reminded him why he couldn't stop now. Every failure was a lesson, not a loss. That's what he told himself each night. When others partied, he read business books under a flickering bulb. He studied billionaires like some study saints. Every page a prophecy. "One good idea," he said, "can change the course of an entire life." But life wasn't kind. The diner shut down and his rent slipped overdue. On a freezing night, he sold his only watch to buy one more week of hope. That night, sitting under a streetlight, he wrote his first startup idea. Dream Fuel, he named it, an app for motivation and daily inspiration. He knew nothing about coding, only how to believe a little harder each day. With borrowed laptops and unpaid Wi-Fi, he built a spark of a dream. His friends called him foolish, said dreams don't feed hunger. But hunger, he thought, is exactly what builds empires. Months passed. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford. Yet, he smiled at every failure, because failure meant progress. He walked 10 miles each day to meet investors who never showed up. His shoes tore apart, but his resolve stitched stronger. The wind on his face wasn't cold anymore. It whispered, "Keep going." One morning, an old man in a cafe overheard him pitch his idea. The man, a retired tech investor, smiled and said, "You remind me of myself." Ethan's hands trembled as the man offered to fund his prototype. That was the first spark of a billion-dollar future. He worked 18 hours a day, drinking dreams instead of coffee. Nights were long, days were silent, but his app started gaining users. For the first time, he saw a notification. 1,000 downloads. He stared at the number, eyes full of tears. Success had knocked. It wasn't about money yet. It was about validation. "The world finally sees me," he whispered under his breath. Within 6 months, Dream Fuel became a trending app in the self-help niche. Blogs started writing about the mysterious founder who rose from nowhere. Ethan didn't attend parties. His joy was watching lives he'd inspired. He saw people comment, "This app saved my life," and he cried silently. For every sleepless night, every rejection, he now had a reason. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the first door opening. He stood in front of his cracked mirror and said, "You're not done, Ethan." Success was still far, but hope now had a voice, and that voice was his. One evening, while walking past a luxury car showroom, he paused. "Someday," he whispered, "not for showing off, but for proving I could." He took a photo of that car, a silver Aston Martin, and saved it as goal. His walls were covered with quotes, plans, and sticky notes of dreams. "Success is rented," he'd written, "and the rent is due every day." The more he worked, the more he realized success was lonely. He had no friends left, only goals that kept him company. But he didn't mind. Kings are always alone before the coronation. His old landlord once said, "Dreams don't pay rent." Ethan smiled and replied, "No, but they pay everything else once you learn patience." Days turned into seasons. Every winter brought a new version of him. Dream Fuel reached its first 1 million users. The world noticed. Investors who once ignored him now called him visionary. He still wore the same shoes, just to remember how far he'd come. Fame began to whisper his name across Silicon Valley circles. Magazines wanted interviews, but he refused most. "I'm not done," he'd say. "This is only the foundation." Late one night, he stood on a bridge, city lights glowing below. The same city that once ignored him now shined with his reflection. He smiled and said softly, "Mom, I made it halfway." But destiny wasn't finished. This was only Act 1 of his empire. In the distance, a luxury car drove by, one he once took a photo of. The universe winked back as if saying, "You're getting closer." Ethan walked home that night not as a dreamer, but as a rising legend. His journey from zero had just begun, and the world had started watching.